This is actually really fun. This is a great mod so far. Which is the 6-Day War, 1967 Third Arab-Israel War documentary. We're gonna watch the documentary about the Third Arab-Israel War, which I know nothing about. I literally wanna actually learn. I wanna get educated. Before the Third Arab War, there was one in 1948 and one in 1956. Wouldn't the Allies the Allies are making Israel, right? They're giving the Jews Israel. And then there's a war in 48. Wouldn't the Allies, like, help?
International interference and the inability of the sides to find a settlement made one of the most iconic conflicts of the modern era, the Six-Day War, inevitable. On May 13, 1967, the Soviet Union falsely informed Egypt about the concentration of 11 to 13 brigades of the Israeli Defense Forces with an intent to strike
Syria. Wait, so it was Russia?
In response, Egypt started concentrating forces along the border with Israel in Sinai, and on May 16th demanded that the UN peacekeeping forces leave the peninsula.
They did.
At the same time, Israel refused.
Well, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to the UN. Good job, man. Really helping there.
The request of the UN to deploy the UNEF on their side of the border. In the next few days, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, and Sudan started mobilization of their forces.
Dude, how did Israel
sent
survive that?
expeditionary forces to Jordan, and Saudi Arabia expressed its willingness to participate in military actions. But the turning point, which made the full-scale confrontation inevitable, was the decision of Egypt to block Israeli ships from entering the Straits of Tiran on May 22nd
Israel
and
fucking
23rd.
300 Spartans over here, man. Shitting on this stuff?
On June 1st, Israel established a national unity government, which on June 4th decided to go to war. The Arab coalition of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria had an advantage over Israel in deployed troops with...
Holy crap, Israel shit on them. Wait, let me cut 1 sec. I once read when I was younger that the airplanes of Israel were like really insane or something.
Planned to strike on June 5th with Operation Focus, which aimed to destroy the Egyptian Air Force. Israeli media published false reports claiming Israeli soldiers were on vacation, while their pilots were carrying out training sorties as usual. Their intelligence helped make this training as realistic as possible. They also damaged the tracking antenna of the US Embassy to prevent the Americans finding out about the operation before.
Dude, Israel, man, dude, they always had a great agency, right? The Mossad. It's always interesting. I mean, I'm talking like an amateur here, but if your country is under massive fucking pressure, you get a fucking agency. Like in Germany, our agency is a joke. It's not, there is none. It doesn't exist. But when your country's under pressure, like fucking Israel, you probably invest a lot of tears, sweat, and money into a very good agency,
the strike took place. The Israeli pilots were informed about the start of the only 5 hours in advance. At the same time, the Egyptian air defense system was effectively off on June 5th. Nearly 200 Israeli aircraft attacked 14 Egyptian airfields and caught them absolutely off guard.
Completely outplayed, man.
338 Egyptian aircraft were destroyed, and 100 pilots were killed within 3 hours. The Jordanian and Syrian air forces attacked Israel in retaliation at 11 AM on June 5th. The response of the Israeli Air Force was to attack their airfields, which led to the destruction of all 28 Jordanian, 53 Syrian, and 10
like I said, I was reading that
planes.
once. The airplanes of Israel carried everything, man.
Operation Focus was a decisive success.
Jesus Christ.
Israel lost only 19 planes in this operation and guaranteed its total air dominance for the rest of the war. The ground war was taking place on 3 fronts: the Sinai front, the Jordanian front, and the Syrian front.
They're
On the
an all-out
Sinai
war,
front,
man. Jesus.
the Egyptian forces consisted of 7 divisions, 4 armored, 2 infantry, and 1 mechanized infantry. Egypt had
Can you guys explain to me, because I really want to learn, isn't the international community doing something about this? Where is America and Europe? They couldn't help the Jews because they fought Cold War.
100,000 troops and 900 to 950 tanks in the Sinai.
But they must have like sent
Israel
equipment or something?
concentrated 3 divisions, consisting
had
of
to
6
find a loan.
armored, 1 infantry,
It was only
1
done in 6 days
mechanized
anyway.
infantry, and 3 paratrooper brigades, for a total of 70,000 men and 700 tanks along this front. Israel's plan was to catch the Egyptians off guard by attacking simultaneously with airstrikes, and attacking through the northern and central routes in the Sinai Peninsula instead of the central and southern routes used during the Sinai War. On the 5th of June at 7:50 AM, the northernmost Israeli division, consisting of 3 brigades and commanded by Major General Israel Tal, started its advance towards Arish through Gaza with an aim to encircle Khan Yunis, while the paratroopers were ordered to take Rafah. Initially, the Egyptians offered little resistance, since their...
But what I never get, maybe they will explain in a second, or you will. So Israel shit on everyone. So why didn't Israel just take Gaza and Sinai and just like, it's ours, fuck all of you. We're gonna shit on you if you do anything else.
Intelligence concluded that this was a diversion rather than a main attack.
They did.
However, soon resistance against the 60th Armored Brigade
Israel just took Gaza after this. And then what happened? That Gaza is free again? Like nowadays? What happened?
On Sheikh Zayed and defeated fierce Egyptian resistance thanks to air domination. The road to Arish was open, and by 8 AM on the 6th of July, elements of the 79th Armoured Battalion and the 7th Brigade entered the suspiciously quiet city. Suddenly, the Egyptians started firing from the balconies and windows, and there was a heavy battle going on for control of the city.
This looks like World War II, man. Almost.
The IDF was only able to take full control of the city after reinforcements were sent. The northernmost division then split into
this
two
video shows how important green air is.
One of them continued the advance on the Suez Canal,
it's not good enough for my photo,
while the
green
second
air.
group turned south and captured
Attack with anti-air beats.
and Jabal Lib.
Like in Hoi 4, right? So Israel has complete green air over me. I'm Egypt. I have 3 heavy tanks with anti-air too. Boom, I won. I shit on all your shitty airplanes. I have 3 tanks with anti-air. I'm gonna encircle you, you're done. That's Hoi 4.
Further south, on the 6th of June,
green air should have more influence in
150
my opinion.
Strong Israeli
Cash should do more damage
38th
to
Armored
tanks.
Division under Major General
Maybe you should be
Ariel
allowed to make an
Sharon
anti-tank
was
plane.
confronted by the Egyptian 2nd Infantry Division under Major General Saadi Naguib, consisting of 16,000 troops and 90 tanks. Israel successfully advanced towards Abu Agela. The paratroopers landed behind Egyptian positions and sowed enough confusion to
where was your
weaken the
parents in this?
artillery of
Or
the
your
Egyptian
grandparents?
defense, which opened the way for the IDF to capture Katef.
What? I looked away for a second. Where the fuck is this guy from? What? Who is that? Oh, paratroop. Your parents were in Lithuania.
Troopers landed behind Egyptian positions
Jesus, man.
and sowed
He
enough
listened to
confusion
chat.
to weaken the artillery of the Egyptian defense, which
Every
opened the
paratrooper's
way
actually
for
quite
the
nice.
IDF to capture Katef. It was followed by a fierce close tank battle, which ended in an Israeli
terrible
victory,
pointless deaths.
with
I fully
40
agree, and it
Egyptian
looks like
and 19 Israeli tanks
Russian fake
destroyed.
news triggered this.
The Egyptian forces in Sinai were still largely intact, but their field marshal, Abdel Hakim Amr, panicked and ordered the retreat of all units from Sinai after hearing about the fall of Abu Agela. This order did not elaborate on the secret.
I just talked about this 2 streams ago. How often history, military success or defeat is dependent on the decision of one individual, man. It's so crazy.
And manner
like
of
one
the retreat,
leader,
which
general
only
field marshal
decreased
doing
the
one
defensive
wrong
capabilities
mistake,
of
man,
the Egyptian
changing
troops.
everything.
During the following day, the
Egyptians
IDF
were also
continued
fasting
its
during
advance
Ramadan.
westward and inflicted heavy
Maybe don't
losses
attack
on the
during Ramadan?
Egyptians, despite episodic heavy resistance by the Egyptians, as in Bin Gefgaffa, the napalm bombing by Israeli aviation,
green air,
and
just
the
too much, man.
uncontrolled retreat weakened the morale of the Egyptian troops.
The Arabs had World War II
Instead
tanks.
of catching, the IDF decided to capture 3 passes from Sinai to the Egyptian mainland and face the Egyptian troops there. Although the IDF was not able to stop all the Egyptian troops from
So you're telling me they took the whole peninsula and
the
gave
UN
it back?
Security Council achieved armistice between both sides.
Oh, the UN achieved
Israel
armistice.
wanted to avoid confrontation with Jordan and Syria before defeating Egypt, but the offers of neutrality to Jordan were rejected, as the Egyptian President Nasser persuaded King Hussein of Jordan that Egypt had an advantage against Israel. On the morning of the 5th of June, both sides started to fire, but Israel attempted a last-gasp attempt to avoid confrontation with Jordan by passing its message requesting peace through the UN representative, Bull. King Hussein countered that it was too late, and the Jordanian Air Force was already on the way. Jordanian and Iraqi aviation started shelling Israeli-controlled West Jerusalem, which caused 16 military and 20 civilian casualties, with 900 buildings damaged. Israel responded with its own air attack within Operation Focus, which damaged the military aviation infrastructure of Jordan and secured Israeli air dominance. East Jerusalem was controlled by Jordan at the time, and the Jordanian army took position in the UN residency, the government house,
if you're from
to
Israel,
fire on the Israeli sector.
If you're from Egypt, man, you're probably, nothing happened, you know.
The Jerusalem Brigade's Reserve Battalion 161 of Israel took the government house, despite heavy losses, and forced the Jordanians to retreat.
Like, this is where God's son is born, man, and people just fucking kill each other over. Sometimes I think if God and Jesus is real, they're just sitting up there like, oh, for fuck's sake. They're furries now and they all shoot each other. And no one is subbing to TommyKay.
Later
that guy was just fucking shaking his head all day,
encircled eastern Jerusalem with the Jerusalem Brigade from the south and the mechanized Harel Brigade and 55th Paratroopers Brigade from the north. A fierce battle took place for Ammunition Hill.
Won back Sinai in the war.
Jordanian resistance was so strong that the IDF lost all but 2 of their attacking officers and achieved the goal only after 4 hours.
God, is the most disappointed death in history.
The 55th Paratroopers Brigade afterwards drove eastwards, reaching Mount Scopus and defeating the other Jordanian positions around the American colony. Towards the evening of June 5th, the mechanized Harel Brigade succeeded in taking Latrun and Ramallah. Also, the 163rd Infantry Battalion secured Abu Tor and cut the old city from Bethlehem and Hebron.
They're just getting shit on, man.
June 7th, the Israeli Minister of Defense, Moshe Dayan, ordered the IDF to enter the old city, despite reservations and concerns by the Israeli government. The fighting was conducted solely by the paratroopers.
These fucking paratroopers all the time. I'm gonna make some of my campaign tomorrow, that's for sure.
The IDF took control of the old city with little resistance. Judea, Hebron, Bethlehem, and Nablus were also captured by the IDF on June.
But when I see these maps, why are these two guys not just walking through, man? Why are they not just encircling? Like, this guy and this guy. Boop. What's the fucking issue? We're gonna get paradrop,
Remnants of the Jordanian army fell back into Jordan. Israel was victorious on this front as well. Syria also believed Nasser about Egypt's early success in the conflict and sent its aviation to attack Galilee. This attack was intercepted by Israeli aircraft.
These
a
Israeli
minor
pilots
ground
are
attack
the
was
carries
also
here,
attempted by the Syrians, hoping to capture the water plants at Tel Dan.
I'm literally gonna play like this tomorrow in the Israel game. Green air paratroopers,
by the IDF as well. Israeli air domination, lack of communication by Syrian units, and tanks being too wide for bridges were among the causes of the unsuccessful attack of the Syrians. This caused them to abandon any attempts to make ground offensives on Israel, and airstrikes were chosen as their method instead.
This looks like almost like World War II.
However,
the way they are
evening
equipped
of
ship.
June 5th, Israel struck Syrian airfields as part of Operation Focus, destroying 2/3 of the Syrian Air Force and forcing the rest out of the conflict. The Israeli leadership was unsure whether to attack Syria. On one hand, Syria was using the Golan Heights to shell Israel. On the other
the Golan
hand,
Heights are
it
so
would have been
fucking
a
important in this
uphill
region.
battle against a fortified enemy. But intelligence about weakened positions of Syria in general, and in Golan Heights in particular, led Dayan to order an offensive on Golan without government authorization. The Israeli offensive started with airstrikes, which severely damaged the defensive infrastructure and morale of the Syrian army.
Dude, these airplanes,
the 8th
man.
Armored Brigade, led by Colonel Albert Mandler, advanced into the Golan Heights from Givat Haim. Heavy fighting in unfavorable terrain led to numerous casualties on both sides. But with the help of their aircraft, the IDF ultimately captured the Zora, Kala, and Ein Fit fortresses. In the central sector, the Israeli 181st Battalion captured the strongholds of Dardara and Tel Hilal after fierce fighting. By the evening of June 9th, Israel reached the plateau, which allowed reinforcements to join them. By dawn, Israel had 8 brigades ready for an assault on the second line of defences. Soon, a ceasefire was negotiated around the so-called Purple Line. By the 11th of June, all military actions stopped. Up to 983 Israelis, 15,000 Egyptians, 700 Jordanians, and 2,500 Syrians were killed in action.
I never heard of this.
Israel gained a huge...
But mustn't this war really lead that all the Arabs are just getting even more mad at Israel now?
It seized the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the west bank of the Jordan River, including East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. About 1 million Arabs were placed under Israel's direct control in the newly captured territory. The Israeli victory came as a result of more efficient military leadership, better preparation of troops, and intelligence.
Dude, that move with the airplanes in the beginning was just insane, man. Like the agents are turning off the radio tower and then bam, all the airplanes are gone. Wow. That sucks, man, that people are fucking dying over there, man. TommyKay wishes all the best to Palestine, Israel, and everyone in that region. Don't kill each other, man. Just play video games with each other. That's gonna make you mad enough. Actually, quite sad stuff. But good education, man. I learned a lot there. Gentlemen, I call today's stream. Thank you very much for watching, man. Subscribe to the channel if you want to support, man. Means a lot. I see you tomorrow for End the World UFC and Israel in World War II, man. Nothing but love. All the best, man. Don't fucking invade each other.